called dangers of cultures of similarity, okay? So if we would do business in China or India, we would understand that those cultures are very different from almost everybody's culture here. And when we would understand that, we would also, our antennas would be tuned to those differences, and we wouldn't dare have a business meeting or negotiate with somebody from India or China without preparing ourselves first, without understanding what are the beliefs and the values that motivate and drive the behavior of those specific cultures. And what happens in cultures of, but what happens in cultures of similarity is that when we think that there are certain cultures that are very similar, we don't pay attention to the differences, okay? We look at the similarity. If we take U.S. and Israel as an example, I speak to many Israeli business people, and they say, I don't understand why I need any training. I've been to New York many times. I took my kids to Disneyland. I stood in line at McDonald's. I had a selfie in Times Square. I totally understand the American cultural setting, so I can sit at a business meeting and negotiate and interact with my U.S. colleagues, and it'll be fine because we're very, very similar. And that is exactly the danger, because it isn't, and yes, we are similar in many ways, okay? But it isn't the similarities that get us in trouble. And if we take the 90-10 myth, it's not the 90% where we are similar and where we can interact with each other successfully that will cause the problems. It's the 10% that is different. All it takes is 10%. But those 10%, when they are ignored and not taken into consideration that there might be something different, then they fester below and they show up always at business transactions, and people, and mostly if you don't even understand that there's a difference, you don't even understand why this interaction, why this business interaction didn't work. And then you contribute it to personality, only to personality. Well, he was rude and he didn't understand me, or whatever that is, but it isn't just personality, okay? It's cultural behavior. So, with that in mind, I want to start what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about explicit culture and implicit culture. And we're going to do it through a very known cultural tool. It's called the iceberg. Some of you may have come across it. And in this iceberg, we have what we see above the sea level, and then we have what motivates us below the sea level. And below the sea level, we have our values, our attitudes, our assumptions, our traditions, and even our religion, okay? So, and what would you say the percentage is of what's above sea level as opposed to what's below sea level?
In Israel, it seems that you have 90%.
Yeah, but we really have only 10% at the top of the sea level. And we interculturalists, we work with the 90% that's below the sea level. Because you see, these are all the things that are above the sea level. These are the things that we can touch and we can see and we can feel and we can even copy, okay? These are all those things that we observe. I get a lot of questions from clients saying, so do I shake when I walk into a business meeting and there are 7 people there? Do I shake everybody's hand when I walk in and when I walk out when the meeting is over? What is the right power distance between me and culture X? These are valid questions, but these are questions that once we observe them, we can copy them. And we can assimilate them into our behavior. That's the easy part. The more difficult part is that if we don't understand the values, assumptions, and beliefs underneath on this part of the iceberg, we want to understand really what motivates the behavior of the people that we need to interact with, okay? And if we're talking about, as we're talking today about a business culture, that within all of these parameters, we will find part of the implicit culture where we need to put specific skill sets in place in order to be able to successfully interact on all of these different levels. And with that in mind, since everything's about perception, we're going to see, I took America as an example, both because of the similarity and also because I couldn't give an example of every single country. So, the hidden differences, how do Americans see themselves? Americans see themselves as very polite, goal and task-oriented, friendly, respectful of privacy, right? Organized, low context, I will explain that, but low context means direct communication. Professional, efficient, trusting, and trustworthy. How do Israelis see Americans? Excessively formal, distant and unfriendly, inflexible, lacking skills to improvise, focused on procedures, focused on roles rather than goals, and distant. How accurate am I? Both on the Israeli side, American side?
Good.
Good. Okay, great. So let's move on. If you say great, this is how Israelis see themselves. Informal, outspoken, direct, honest, spontaneous, open, hospitable, warm, assertive, willing to take risks, flexible about plans, creative about rules and regulations, self-confident. How Americans see Israelis? Rude, aggressive, inconsiderate, tactless, unprofessional, dominating, stubborn, chaotic, unsystematic, overconfident, pushy, undisciplined, inefficient, and sloppy.
Great. What does sloppy mean?
Sloppy means not organized. Okay? So, if I'm American sitting with an Israeli, and that happens a lot, we have this reputation. Okay, this can also, and I will show you how this also works for us. It works positively. But taken to an extreme, it becomes rude and dominating and stubborn. Okay, it all has a purpose, but it's all a perception of how we see each other. You wanted to ask something.
Yeah, I find a lot that when I just want to say I do actually like living here. When I talk about this country, people are like, what, do you like it there? Like, I find that a lot, there's like an egocentric kind of thread, not even just in Israel, like in the Middle East. I think this is part of the problem. Like, it's a very ego, like I'm right all the time. So how do you work with, especially in your role, like if they think they're right, like an Israeli thinks like, I do know that culture, I am right. How do you get them to understand, see the bigger picture?